Hello viewers, my name is Adam.
And I am Aaron.
This is Seeking Me Productions, bring you another movie review.
Did not see myself at all watching this film. We've definitely made it quite clear about where we stood with Marvel/Disney in their handling of the property of Spider-Man.
For the initial trilogy of the MCU Spider-Man starring Tom Holland, we did not watch any of those movies in theaters, mainly due to the fact that when watching the trailers, we were not impressed with John Watts' direction on how the visual scope of it just didn't really lend itself to going to watch it in theaters.
And it also refers back to the concept that whenever you're doing a movie that's supposed to be centering in on a particular character, in this case the titular character being Spider-Man, we totally believe that movie should center itself squarely on that character without having to feel the need to piggyback off of the other characters that are around them, specifically other characters from the rest of the franchise.
And unfortunately, Tom Holland's character, he was made to be in the shadow of Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark. The reason why we decided to go watch this movie in theaters is because we did like Shang-Chi, directed by Destin Cretton, who is apparently rising up in the ranks in the MCU after doing the first season of Wonder Man. Unfortunately, that got canceled.
That's the whole thing. We'll talk about that later.
He was originally going to be directing Secret Wars, but
that fell through.
Yeah. So thankfully, he was able to get this up and running. And from the trailer, when I did the trailer review for it, this actually was the first time of seeing a Tom Holland MCU movie that actually looks like it'd probably be worth watching in theaters because of a fresh outlook, of the fresh direction, and of course the visual scope, and that looks like that Destin Cretton brought from Shang-Chi into Spider-Man now.
So, with Brand New Day, it had quite a few things it actually had to do in order to qualify as a legit or at least worthwhile Spider-Man outing for us. And one of the major things, so I feel as though something that almost every Spider-Man fan has been asking for, was for a Peter Parker story that centers into his adult life. An individual who is no longer just shackled by being a high schooler and having to deal with stories that revolves around him growing into a role. Thankfully, that's one of the major things that this film definitely does.
Yeah, he's out like a few years after No Way Home. It looked like he was able to finish college of some sort. But though we don't know exactly how his actual job occupation is.
Yeah, they don't make that actually at all any particular way feasible to understand. But
he was able to rent some renting apartment space.
A large space too, compared to what I now know as the situation for a lot of New Yorkers. I mean,
And the thing is, from No Way Home, after the incident that basically caused him to
wipe all the memories of anybody who knew him, he is definitely on the struggle bus dealing with that. He is very much on his own. He does have some camaraderie to be able to piggyback off of in the form of the Wolf.
Jean DeWolf from the comics, so thankfully that they're bringing even more supporting characters that have yet to been adapted from the Spider-Man comics. And basically he's, being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that he is, he's actually well-rounded and with various forms of law enforcement.
And a lot of individuals throughout the city as well, even if his life isn't necessarily going the way he wants.
As we like in our Peter Parker Spider-Man story.
He's got to go through it.
Immediately, when watching this movie, the first initial, even before the trailer, the first look that we actually saw was the behind-the-scenes reel of them actually making the earlier portions of the movie, and it was basically just a celebration of Spider-Man and how appreciative this character is. That feeling from last year when they did that feature reel is actually permeated throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, all of this film definitely feels as though it was crafted and molded with care, and it definitely feels like that warm hug feeling that you get for certain particular characters that you desperately need for a character like Peter Parker / Spider-Man. But this film, where the story really centers itself around, is Peter's struggle of having to live in a world where his closest friends and his love interest is no longer in his life, but also on top of that, with unique changes that are dealing with him and his powers.
Yes, he is going through an evolution from his radioactive spider bite. He's going through changes, spider puberty, radioactive sense. And that plot basically gets catapulted into, essentially we are moving gears into the next phase of the MCU. You already know that Kevin Feige is announced an X-Men movie is in development.
He is going hard on trying to introduce these characters. However, I will say that he is taking a unique twist in his attempt to do so, I'm waiting to see how that really folds out. With this particular movie, this introduction of a certain character is definitely a unique angle. Definitely not going to,
at least with this character,
yeah, how they're definitely not going to go too far into it, but I will say that I am intrigued with a lot of the elements that he did bring up. It's going to be, and when it comes to specifically when we talk about the X-Men or mutants in general, which isn't really thrown around at the terminology, we're going to have to really work on making sure that we understand what we're dealing with, and somehow they're going to desperately need to understand what makes a mutant different from a mutate or from any other enhanced individual or super soldier. We need those classifications to be down strict so that we understand what we're dealing with when they actually come up.
But getting to this point, I feel as though like first half of this movie does feel more like a solo Spider-Man. I wish it would have been more of his actual solo, especially using a lot of others like Rose Gallery. Like it's appreciative that they brought back Scorpion, Matt Gagan,
and then they introduced other characters from Spider-Man's Rose Gallery too. I just wish we got most of the concept is that I wish they actually spent more on that concept. And then when we talk about his puberty situation, some of the ideas that they do introduce or at least play with, I think it works in certain respects, but there are other parts where I feel as though where they took the character I don't necessarily agree with, without having to go super into spoilers. Adding in a element that was from a different Spider-Man outing into this one, I don't necessarily agree they should have went in that direction, because I feel as though that's a unique thing that was with that adaptation. And with this one, I feel as though when they focus mainly on who Peter Parker is, and then how this one should feel unique and fresh and different, should be in that angle.
Since they decided to go with the evolution take on about Peter Parker's powers, bare bones to the minimum of what, especially how it was portrayed in the comics.
I wish they actually had went there. I mean, I understand Disney. I feel as though Disney has to come out of its own, has to get out of its own way. We're dealing with certain situations that is going to go into territories that might be horrific or if not horror coded. And I feel as though if we're going to go forward in the MCU with other characters that will end up having to deal with horror elements, introducing that now would be a good choice. And I think they should have definitely done that with this story.
And I will say, as far as the plotting is concerned, they also need to start being more communicative with other directors and what is being done in previous movies, because there's mainly towards the third act of this movie, it feels very derivative, especially for very derivative of the third act of certain lot of elements from the previous film last year, like we're talking Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four. Elements of which from either narratively and visually.
With other characters, again, they were working with in this film, Sadie Sink's character, who's acting more of an who's in an antagonistic role. I actually really do enjoy this actress, and I did enjoy what she brought to this film. With the character she's playing, again, it's an interesting take. I am really looking forward to how well Feige and the crew and everybody who's working with in Marvel will work with these characters going forward. But they gotta be really careful, especially when we look at the visual elements and how they differentiate certain characters. Her power set should feel unique to her. They do introduce a unique element how she does work with those abilities, especially earlier in this film and then going towards the end, at least in certain respect. But I do also feel as though the rest of the way how they interpret her abilities and what she brings, it was too close towards another character in Marvel that they've introduced recently, and they just, again, be careful in how you visually interpret another character.
Playing a new, younger version of an already previously adapted character, but this one, the time that she is be more, I would say more assertive, but because they aimed it for an antagonistic role, it's going to be very difficult for how they try and maneuver this character into more of a heroic angle, because there are a lot of things that happen in this movie. It can the likability of this character can be very ruined if they don't know how to navigate that in a more appropriate manner.
And I get it. Because the unique elements for this particular individual and individuals like them going forward in the MCU, you have to come up with a rapport as to why they will be treated in a certain sense. And this is one angle you can do that in. Just don't do it too much where it doesn't feel like we're no longer dealing with the characters in general, or you have completely just alienated your audiences from ever having to have any particular connections to them at all forward.
Tom Holland as Peter Parker Spider-Man.
I think this is the best that he's been with this character. I think this is definitely the time where I feel I was able to truly connect with him from his first outing when they first had him play the character.
Very much is playing up the very more relatable aspects to Peter Parker. Interactions with everyone does help with the moving more of the ensemble. So he really does work well. Even when expressing a wide range of emotions, this is the reason why he gets I can understand why he's taking so much charge of the character, because this is his best role. Zendaya and Jacob Batalon, who plays his forgotten friends, MJ, Michelle Jones,
I think this was a wonderful sense. I feel as though, especially with MJ, with this version of MJ, I guess, or whatever, how they
how they different. Michelle Jones.
Yeah, Michelle Jones. Yeah.
Different character.
It was. I feel as though this was a beautiful book note for that character and the relationship she had with Peter.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to what another actress will bring when they introduce them
as another
love interest going forward. I'm fingers crossed. I really do want to see a live action Black Cat.
But the character of Ned Leeds, it's a good thing this movie did not use a lot of him.
Mm-hmm.
What Ned Leeds brought is one of the annoyances that I had with the MCU Spider-Man. One is because they was just one of the elements is just to be different,
Mm-hmm.
because they were too hesitant to redo or repurpose certain previously already adapted. And that leads to the worst kind of case, because one, he's technically playing a different character that's more associated with Miles Morales' Spider-Man.
Yep.
With the name of another Spider-Man villain, where a character who has been the Hobgoblin, and he does not portray any he portrays.
I will never see this character in that way,
and not the Hobgoblin. It's just more of a character in name only, but playing a character. So when they do bring Miles Morales into the MCU fold, how are you going to handle his technically best friend? Because you stole that from Peter. You stole it from Miles.
And gave it to Peter. I'm like,
John Bernthal as the Frank Castle, but he does not be called Punisher in this one. He is the Punisher in the costume.
Mm-hmm.
This is his portrayal is a more lighthearted take what we have been previously saw in the Marvel TV space, and in fact, his role is actually the best integration of the Marvel TV elements.
This is what you want to do when you have a lot of your franchise spread across different mediums. I mean, you want to bring them together, especially from the television scope to the cinematic scan lens. This is how you do it. and I hope that they do this going forward. If they do still have the franchise spread out like this, I don't believe they will.
In this movie, we see Spider-Man and Punisher team up before we ever saw Spider-Man Daredevil team up.
That's wild.
But their interactions, they really did make for a good duo, a good emotional duo, but also even more in this very comedic duo.
I think now we have finally seen our next Budapest situation.
The Status Island incident.
I really do not play us like I did last time. We did not get the wonders and of the mystery that was surrounding Budapest as we should have had. But we better
flashback.
We better get that Status Island incident.
Another Marvel guest supporting role is Bruce Banner, Hulk, or return as Mark Ruffalo is the role.
This is the first time that I've seen that character that I actually really liked him in the role of Banner. I've never really been on
Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, Mark Ruffalo's bandwagon like everybody else did. I love Hulk as a character. I just haven't really necessarily agreed with the way that they portrayed him in the series. But I do think the way they was done in this movie was a little bit more a return to force to how he was originally depicted.
Especially how they initially introduced the character in the MCU.
Yeah.
His role is, though small, is very integral to Peter's development, how he was navigating his evolution, and unfortunately it was like an Oppenheimer situation. The repercussions of the development that Peter takes within the assistance of Bruce Banner is definitely going to be played down the line. And another character that also plays a significant role is the character William Wesker or something like that. He's portrayed by Travis Tillman, who was the director of the Department of Damage Control, who has been a presence in the MCU Spider-Man because they basically handled the cleanup duty.
I will say that I actually enjoyed this organization's development in this film a lot more than I unfortunately have to say that I cared for their interpretation for other Marvel organizations like S.H.I.E.L.D. or S.W.O.R.D. I got a decent understanding of where this department is going, but it also looks like they're going to be mixing this department with other Marvel's stories and organizations. That is going to be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, though I do wish that they bring back S.H.I.E.L.D. so they can develop that even further. I understand, like Marvel, Kevin Feige didn't want anything to do with Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show.
But that's the same situation they deal with, like I would say, the Inhumans characters. Like you can't, just because you personally don't like Element, when you have to look at your entire franchise, there are going to be parts that are going to have to intersect with those parts that you personally may not like. And you can't just say, oh, we're just not going to do it because that's what you feel about. If it serves the purpose for the franchise, work with it. Mm-hmm. We're going to take that little minute right now to go ahead to talk about directions going forward for Marvel, especially with the way that they're being handled.
We mentioned earlier in this video the cancellation of Wonder Man. As a small, decent success, and even as a show, we actually kind of like it was like one of the highlights of Marvel TV.
Yep.
No matter how hit and miss that was, but they were originally renewed for season 2.
So it makes absolutely no sense, or it just boggles the mind why you would go ahead and cancel this series, which was also a huge award contender for you. What was the issues there? And it's also very mind-boggling when you look at it from the lens that is dealing with a character that is from a demographic, at least you race-bended a character to fit a demographic that is related to another character who's from that same demographic, whose series seems to be completely on the loop.
There's many, like how Marvel has had very botched a lot of the productions led by characters of color.
And not just Marvel, Disney in general, because this is a situation that's really born from that, since they own this franchise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is definitely a stain.
Yeah.
And you can't rely on one highlight as your token. That being said, the overall production, even though it's a small in scope story, is very immersive, and Destin Cretton was able to work with his crew and bring one of the best looking Spider-Man movies, but also one of the best MCU movies in a long time.
Yes. I love the way that this film has a lot more textual elements towards it. With his suit, it feels like that is his, because it is. That's the suit, and that doesn't feel like it's just a CGI, character in the cyberspace. You see him doing the actions. You see the development of the way that the suit flows on him whenever he's doing those actions. I love the elements where you get to appear in Peter's Spider-Man vision, or the scenes that are from his perspective.
Something that was very obviously, they take inspirations from many past Spider-Man or past and current Spider-Man productions, like the
Amazing
Spider-Man
series.
from the POV during the many well done swinging sequences that's in this film. The Insomniac Spider-Man gameplay.
It's permeated through almost all of this, especially from the way they deal with Peter Parker's ingenuity as a scientist. Those web bombs were really cool to see.
The practicality, a lot of the stunts, they said that
from Peter's web, tackling on for certain certain enemies towards the other individuals, like the hand. That was really interesting, cool stuff to see. The hand was handled as well as they were, as far as technically, in this movie. Throughout the rest from the other indices or circumstances that they were introduced in Marvel, we would be dealing with some really interesting stuff.
And when I mean that this is one of the best looking MCU movies, this movie has a very sense of depth in the camera work. We have been talking during some movies that they have a lack of color. This movie handles color very well.
Yes.
A lot of the environments, they're saturated, well balanced. Like I said, some of the elements that were unfortunately being derivative from previous movies, I hope that they try course correct that moving forward.
Yep.
And unfortunately, just a little bit critique on another thing that I want to put on this movie is from the entire MCU Spider-Man franchise now. Michael Giacchino's score is unfortunately one of the weakest scores that's in the
it makes absolutely no sense why this version of Peter Parker / Spider-Man, or the world that he's in, doesn't have a unique score for itself. At least not one that it's it keeps you going. That's half the immersion for a film or any particular project that deals with the visual scope. To have that as this backup, and I still don't get that auditorial feel yet.
It doesn't help when you usually constantly use the classic 1960s. Anytime you use MCU Spider-Man, which is so. What we feel about Spider-Man: Brand New Day?
I think this was probably one of those films that actually fell into the good category. It's still a lot of work they have to do in order to get them up there on the higher echelon for movies, but this is actually definitely a good step forward and a bright future if they actually do the work and actually help develop their stuff right.
Yes, and I think even more so next time, if it was obviously going to be another Spider-Man, especially how successful this movie is going to be, and try and work more Spider-Man solo elements into the plot.
Yep.
We get that Spider-Man is popular, and you're basically using this movie as basically even more of an introduction to the next phase. More specific Spider-Man stories will work wonders. I don't care if y'all decide to skip out on the origins of Spider-Man. You do need to finally address the Uncle Ben problem.
That is a significant aspect of that character's origins. And Uncle Ben is a significant aspect as to why he even exists in the first place.
Yeah, he's the reason why he's Spider-Man. And I understand that you wanted to beef up Aunt May's role, but the erasure of that character should not have been Should not be a thing.
No.
Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment below. What's your favorite Spider-Man film? Or
Did you go out and you watched this one? If you did, what elements did you think they were cooking with? Which ones they need to desperately just throw away and be put into trash?
check out social media outlets of Threads, Instagram, and Letterboxd for other content we don't necessarily post on the channel. And this has been a Seeking Media Productions.
See you later.